Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So it is no secret that Kamala Harris has been gaining in public polling ever since Joe Biden decided to bow out of the presidential race, or dare I say, when they essentially gave him a soft coup and they said, Joe, we could do this the easy way, or we could do it the hard way. Joe decided to take the easy way. He wanted to run. Everybody knows that he wanted to run, but still, they forced him out, and we know why they did, because he could not defeat Donald Trump. So they replaced him. They had no choice but to replace him with the most unpopular vice president in American history. But here's the deal. They've been trying to give her this makeover, and her favorables went from, 35% in March. They were 38 come July. And then they've shot up to the moon. She's currently in the polling aggregate at 46% favorable, 49% unfavorable when you round the two numbers. And it's like, is this necessarily all real? I obviously would understand why some Democrats would be coming home, having a more favorable view of Kamala Harris. Just like Donald Trump, when he got the nomination, more Republicans said that they had a favorable view of him. That part is true, but the unfavorables dropping ridiculously like this does beg some questions, because double haters do exist. It's true that people will vote for somebody they don't like over Donald Trump, and vice versa, by the way, because they don't like that candidate more. Double haters exist, but these unfavorable numbers dropping, there's questions. Are the pollsters being, I guess you would say, manipulated by a response bias that's hard to weigh? Because this is something that a lot of people have speculated, and it has rung true in the past. In 2012, Mitt Romney was never ahead. In 2008, John McCain was never ahead. But after the debate performance against Obama, or after the Palin VP pick, in each respective situation, you saw a massive surge for one side. Now, this has been a honeymoon period that has been continuing for a couple weeks now. We understand that. But there's still a lot of questions, because we've seen response biases before that have gone on very long. In August, you compare the polls in August now to August in 2016 or 2020, Donald Trump is much, much better off now than he was either one of those years, and we understood how those elections ended up unfolding. So will there even be a DNC bump for Kamala Harris? Well, it's possible, but the pollsters would just have samples that would be ridiculous. And what did we decide to do here at Red Eagle Politics? We teamed up with SoCal Strategies, SoCal Research. We teamed up with On Point as well, and we conducted a poll. We've done this before. Nationally, we've done it in Michigan before, and Donald Trump himself shared the poll on his Truth Social, by the way, which was pretty cool. The first acknowledgement of this channel from the former and potentially future president himself. But in terms of the poll, we were questioning, what are we going to get? Because now we want to be transparent with this. This is not some data that we, trumped up to make Donald Trump look good. It's also not data that we were, overly cautious with, where we didn't wait at all, because that would be an accurate way to kind of go about it as well. But here's the result. Kamala Harris is up. She is leading Donald Trump by a margin of 50 to 48, which again gives Donald Trump a lead in the Electoral College. It does. If Donald Trump hits 48, that's his magic number. He's more likely than not going to win. And we are going to be polling the swing states in September, the swing states in October, because polling nationally itself past a certain point is kind of not necessary to determine the state of the race in these certain places. But when you look at this, you have to look into the data. You have to look a little bit deeper, because we did weigh for as much stuff as we possibly could, but the sample was just utterly ridiculous. And you can see this right here. When you look at this, the data, the sample was 57% female, a 14-point lead, which we had to weigh down, because you're in every single given electorate, you're going to see an electorate that's more representative of, 52% female at most. Our sample was 22% black. That in zero universe is going to be the case. Obama, 2008, 2012, only 13% of the electorate then was black. 22% of the poll respondents being black. You're seeing who's answering the polls more. and it's getting deeper into the data. And then you can try to go out there and weigh for as many things as you can, but past a certain point, it just becomes, I guess you would say, unweighable. And the poll itself will probably be a little bit to the left more so than what the nation is at. You look at during the BLM riots in 2020, Biden was leading by 11 points. He was never leading by 11. I don't believe Biden was ever up by more than 6 points nationally in 2020. So we've seen response biases before, and we're likely just seeing one again. But here's another thing. Millennials. 38% of the respondents are millennials. Usually they're like 20, 22% of the electorate. And people could say, well, what if these people just vote? It does not work that way. These are people that are just answering the polls, and they're more likely to answer the polls now than they were before. Most voters in this country are over the age of 55. But in our panel, well, only 10% of the electorate was over the age of 65. We're probably talking about 25% of the electorate being, above the age of the median electorate in reality, even in a good year for Democrats. So that's not exactly something that is easy to weigh for. And then you talk about the amount of people who did not vote in the 2020 election, 25% of the sample, like 32% of our sample voted for Donald Trump in the 2020 election before we had to weigh it. So already you're looking at this Midwest sample was the only, percentage that was in line with what we expected it to be. And the Midwest results were also more in line with the polling beforehand than any other group, but also D+8 in terms of the sample. Now, we weighed for that. It's true, but that does seep into the independent margins to a certain extent. Usually 25% of the public are not going to be independents when you try to account for leans the best. And we tried, but in reality, you can only push people in a poll so far. But you look at the crosstabs and what we see, Donald Trump still, despite all of that, you're still talking about him polling at a vote share that is higher than he ever got in the 2016 election or the 2020 election. And there's a lot of room for Donald Trump to potentially gain if this is a response bias. And we will see what happens in the coming weeks. We will see what happens in the next couple of months or so. But the truth remains that this election is a dogfight in terms of the national popular vote. The swing states lean a little bit more to the Trump column, which is also something. But nationally, this is going to be a dogfight election, and it comes down to turnout more so than anything else. This is why people need to make sure they can chase as many ballots, get everyone you know out to vote, make sure they're going to vote, but also volunteer. Find as many ballots as you possibly can by Election Day, and we're most certainly going to go out there and win this election. It's that plain and simple. You have roughly half the country that likes Trump. You have half the country that doesn't like Trump. We need the half of the country that likes Trump to vote at the highest possible rates so we can go out there and win this election. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of disappointment in the comments, a lot of disappointment across the country, and we know that. But there are several takeaways because it's just surprising that response bias was just insane for black voters, for non-college whites that lean Democrat for some reason, particularly among the elderly who say that they voted for Biden in 2020. So this is kind of something that's a little iffy because people are saying Trump's losing the white working class base. But that's just not true. There's no evidence for it. It defies all common logic. And when you look into the poll itself, the percentage of the callback for 2020, these people voted for Biden. They're being oversampled as well. And you talk about black women, millennial women. Those are the most engaged to respond, but they're also the most disinterested in voting in the likely voter screen, which is kind of questionable because Democrats are more enthused to answer polls, but the polls show how certain are you to vote. Their numbers are just where they were with Biden. The only difference is Kamala Harris is getting a lot of people who are questioning Biden, maybe the RFK voter who voted for Biden in 2020 and doesn't like Trump. Those people are coming home to Harris. She's narrowed the gap with Trump, but is she really leading by 2 points? Even in our data, I can't exactly say that there's definitive analysis that she's even ahead because you look at this response bias and we've talked about this. There's a really high chance that there's a lot of these older, boomer, hippie, non-college white Democrat women who are living in very, Trumpian areas as well that are representing that demographic in the polls. And that's kind of something that is a little bit interesting, because you talk about these new voters, the infrequent voters. They're the hardest people to reach, and they do live in those areas. They've helped Trump out before. They explained the polling gaps in the past. And if you look at the registration data, especially in those areas, it's skewing heavily in favor of Donald Trump this cycle. So we're going to see what happens, but we polled nationally. We're going to wait a couple weeks, let the DNC settle down, and then we're going to start polling Pennsylvania. We're going to start polling Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona at some point. But the problem is that these polls, they do cost money. I know a lot of you guys have supported me. You supported the channel, supported me through the website, super chats, etc. I appreciate it. But if you guys want to donate directly to the polling fund, to the GoFundMe, for the On Point Red Eagle SoCal polling fund, you guys can do so. The link will be in the description down below. In the past week alone, we've raised $5,400. I really appreciate it. A lot of you guys donated already. If there's other people that would like to donate, feel free. If not, that's fine. I'm not going to hold you to it. But if you'd like to help out, you can do it there. But anyways, guys, it seems like conducting the polls, you see a lot of data flow in, and it kind of just confirms that it's really hard to weigh for a lot of these things right now compared to a month or two ago, because the response bias in these polls is just insane. And for people asking what a response bias is, all it means is that Democrats are more likely to answer polls right now. And it's possible you saw a response bias in the other direction back when Donald Trump was leading Biden by so much, just because Democrats were ashamed, they're embarrassed of Joe Biden. Now they're emboldened, and we'll see what happens after the DNC if they possibly could even get a higher response bias. But it's important to note that a lot of these polling shifts are just noise, and we got to keep our eye on the ball in these swing states, especially the Big Seven. Get as many votes as possible, get more votes than them, go out there and win. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.